consumer behavior is really coming in handy for me to study people, to tweak. Like the way I sell to Isaac will be very different to the way I sell to Kelly.
That's the benefit that uh, tracking that does for you is you're able to know what your consumer wants.
Starting to create things that you know are bad for them. So like Dr. Khetani said, when people are in a bad mood, they eat bad food. And if you suddenly start looking at somebody in a bad mood, then suddenly you can target them with political ads that just agitate them more and drive them insane and this kind of thing.
What do you think kind of the direction of consumer behavior as a whole is going, especially in today's society, and how it's kind of going to evolve, especially with e-commerce, social media, AI is another big one. I'm just curious on what your thoughts are on that. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for coming back and watching our next podcast. Today, we are going over a very important topic, and I am personally very excited to do that. And before we get into that, though, I want to introduce everybody real quick. Again, my name is Isaac Wienen. I'm the co-founder / CMO of Aitido Strategies.
And hello again, my name is Kelly Aitido. I am the founder of Aitido Strategies, and welcome back.
Hi, I'm Salil Khetani. I teach at Heidelberg University in the School of Business, mostly all marketing related topics, and I've had both Isaac and Kelly as students.
And I am Herman Wienen, aka now El Herminio for this one. And I am a director of business analytics for a global IT services company, and also just happened to be Isaac's dad. Right?
Now, as you said, this is Khetani, everybody. Now, I want you to go ahead and go a little bit more into your past and explain more on who you are and where your specialties are, so everyone can kind of get a hold of who you really are.
All right. You said this podcast is for 45 minutes. This will go on for 45 minutes. So I'll be brief, but I'll make sure I cover everything. I was in school, back in India. I did my schooling back in Mumbai and in India. And there, towards my 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grades, I started getting really good grades. And at that time, if you have good grades, you're typecast into you become a doctor or an engineer. I picked engineering because I don't like biology. But I never liked engineering. I did it for 4 years, and towards the end, there again, I got really good grades, just to show my parents that hey, I did what you asked me to do. But I started getting more and more interested in marketing, in business, but more towards marketing. And I wanted to switch fields. I wanted to do an MBA because I wanted to work in an environment where I make the decisions and I'm not just asked to design a product or something like that. So I started reading up on marketing. I started subscribing to, at that time, there was a magazine, maybe it's still around, called Business India. And then there was this brand equity supplement in the Economic Times, which is again a newspaper in India. I started really getting interested in marketing. So I decided to, so once I graduated, I took a pre-sales job where I used to it wasn't the best job, but where I used to create kits for salespeople in an IT firm when they took it, and then they took that to customers. And I was like, I want to be a salesperson. I don't want to be the pre-sales person, but for that I realized I needed to do an MBA. So I got my MBA. It's a degree from Mumbai University, but it's from a college which is really good, called Soma Institute of Management Studies and Research. I did my MBA for 2 years, absolutely loved it, way more than I liked engineering. And during that MBA phase, I also figured I developed a lot of skills and started my first sales job in selling structured investment products, mutual funds that are more customized. So mutual funds I don't know if you're familiar. It's like, everybody has the same kind of portfolio when you launch into a common mutual fund. But let's say Kelly is a customer who can invest 1 million or more. He would expect some kind of customization and things like that. So we call them portfolio management services. So I started selling that more like in the B2C space. My first job was an amazing job, amazing culture. So I did that, and I did 4 different jobs in sales and marketing. Really liked it. The first two were in financial services, and the second one was in a bank. The third one, my favorite job, was selling elevators, and that kind of related back to my engineering. So that was perfect for me. I did that for 2.5 years. And then my fourth job was for a distributor. So that's where my marketing came in. So the first 3 jobs were more sales. The fourth job was more marketing oriented, where their sales office was reporting to me. So I was kind of the boss there. And that was an amazing job because it was marketing construction steel in rural areas. So we had to appoint retailers in rural areas, and then we had to give them funds to market themselves. And then had to approve those funds and things like that. So it was a lot of like, I was evaluated not just on my sales, but how much money did I spend in this specific territory? And then how much returns did I get? Did I get a sales growth? So it was a very data-driven job. So that was nice. But while doing that, I realized that I like working with data. I like analyzing things. And over a period of time, I also realized that, the course that I took in my MBA, consumer behavior, is really coming in handy for me to study people, to tweak. Like the way I sell to Isaac will be very different to the way I sell to Kelly, because both of you are very different people, and uh,
Mm.
I'll, with Kelly, I might keep it short because I get that vibe from him that, he likes to come to his own conclusions. So I just give him the big picture, and he'll come to his own conclusions. With Isaac, I might go into a bit more detail, because, uh, uh, it's just, it's just the vibe I get when I talk to you. So I thought, why not study it formally? So started, I started applying to PhD, half-heartedly applying to PhD programs everywhere. Uh, I just thought, just check it out. But then I got a call from University of Oregon and University of Utah, an interview call. And from University of Utah, the person who called me for an interview sent me a lot of material to read. Like they really wanted to hire me. And then when I started reading those consumer behavior articles and research, I was like, this is something I can do. So then I moved to Utah, got my PhD. It's called PhD in business, but the specialization is marketing, and the super specialization within marketing is consumer behavior, where you don't just passively collect data and analyze it. That's one field of marketing called econometrics. But in consumer behavior, you run studies and get your own data and then analyze it. You form your own hypotheses. So it's kind of, what Isaac has done, psychology and marketing, you just combine the two. So that's what I did. And then the other reason why I decided to choose a PhD was usually PhDs end up teaching. And I I like to teach. I love to teach, in fact. And I also, this may sound narcissistic, which perhaps it is, but I love to have an audience. I love to be in front of people. So I thought teaching would be a good job for me, where, it's not just me like performing for people, it's actually me helping people. And it's a very fulfilling job. At the end of the day, if I've uh, helped a student improve, get from point A to point B, and if it's like an incremental improvement, it's great. So I started teaching marketing at Heidelberg University. I've been doing that for 6.5 years. And yeah, that's
All right, guys, sorry about that cut off. My computer just decided for the first time to just glitch out, so sorry for the interruption. But it's really cool to see that because I mean, hearing about your story and everything, I do have one question, and it's not necessarily for business. I just kind of ask it, but did you ever know you were going to be a professor, or was that something that just kind of you stumbled upon 1 year later?
So I started thinking about it when I was in that job where I talked about, when we were selling these construction steel rebars. That's where I started thinking about PhD. Now, the thing is, I have a lot of PhDs in my family. My sister is a PhD. My aunt and my uncle, like two of my dad's siblings have a PhD, and one of those siblings' wife has a PhD. So I was surrounded by them. So I knew what I was getting into. I knew that, well, if I get a PhD, very likely I'll be a professor. And I was fine with it because I remember during my MBA for the more technical topics uh, that were math heavy, like production management. I used to teach my other friends who didn't have an engineering background. I used to we used to have study sessions, and I used to enjoy doing that. And they used to actually understand what I was explaining, so I knew what I was getting into. So yeah, around that time, slightly before I started considering PhD, I was like, I could become a professor, and I was fine with it.
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
that's really cool because I was just wondering because I know a lot of I just asked professors and just teachers alike. I'm like, did you ever know? And I would say the overall consensus is I never planned on doing it. It just ended up I liked what I was doing and I somehow ended up teaching others. So I just thought I would ask that.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much for being on this. And as everyone can see, you're very qualified for this. And that's why I'm very excited to talk on this episode, in particular, your specialty in consumer behavior and really its importance on business. And before we get into that, I am just kind of I want to take a step back and on the more broad range of marketing. I'm just
Mhm.
curious, in like your own personal terms or whatever, how would you define marketing? And would you say it's essential to businesses?
So, if you look up what is marketing, you will come up with like 500 different ways in which people define it, most of which are very complex. So, I'd like to keep it simple. So, for me, marketing is a sum total of three things. One is creating value, second is communicating that value, and the third is delivering that value. So what I mean by creating value, again, I also kind of slightly give you a vaguest definition, but the creating value happens when you have a really good product to sell or a really good service to sell. And I always advise my students that, don't join a firm whose product you're not confident with because they have not created good value. And then you will have nothing to sell. Like, then you will have to resort to maybe unethical practices or aggressive hard selling to push a product that is perhaps not that good. So the first step is creating that good value. The second step is, you may have an amazing product, but you also need to communicate that well. So that's my favorite part of marketing, the communication part, advertising, social media, sales, and those aspects where you promote your product. So that's important. And I'll give you an example. So I just saw an Instagram reel which talked about Oreos. So Oreo originally, uh, back in maybe the early 1900s, there was another product called Hydrox, which were also cookies that were very similar to Oreo. But Oreo was the second one which came up with a similar cookie, but they were successful because they were much better at marketing. And honestly, they named their product well, like who would eat a cookie named Hydrox? So branding, yeah, it sounds like a chemical. So branding, marketing, promotion, that all comes at the communication of your value part. Because you have a good product, you have to create a good feel about your product. That's where branding comes in, brand name and all that. And the third thing is delivering value. Take the Oreo example. There's a town called Republic, Ohio, in Ohio. May not have heard of it.
Yeah.
It's population of 500 people. There is a gas station there that sells Oreos. So Oreo has an amazing distribution network. So they are delivering that value. Same with IT to strategies. You may have good ideas, you may market yourselves really well, but you also have to deliver. Once a customer comes to you with a problem, you need to deliver that value. So it's like that's what I mean by creating, communicating, and delivering. And
Hmm.
yes, it is important for businesses. Marketing, you in the end, you have to generate revenue, you have to get customers. So short answer, yes, it is important for any business.
Yeah, I often think this question, and actually a recurring thing that we talk about on this podcast is I mean, you brought it up as well. When people say marketing, your mind just goes, everyone's
Mhm.
mind goes in different places. Typically, it tends to be on the more short-term things and like the creative aspect, like ads, like or social media. Like when I say marketing, especially with a lot of my peers, they'll be like, oh, ads, or and even business owners we've talked to, ads, social media. That's pretty much the two things. But what I really like about you is you broke it up. There is three sections, and yeah, a way I think of it is like obviously, and it kind of goes with when we ask people like what are they even looking for as a business. I mean, the three steps you segment, then you target, then you position in that and then find creative ways to kind of display that value. I don't know, Dad or Kelly, did you have any on that?
Well, I have one on that, and Dr. Katani. Do you, and Isaac, I think I told you about this when I came across it. It was the entire flow of marketing all the way to sales with the analogy of the circus coming to town. Do you remember that one?
Vaguely.
Vaguely. Okay, okay. So I got the high level. I pulled up the notes. Dr. Katani, feel free to say, shut up. No. But the marketing, the idea was marketing is first of all making people aware that you have something, and so when the circus comes to town, that people know it's coming to town and it's going to be Saturday, that would be like the marketing. But then if you do advertising, if you put a sign on an elephant and then run that elephant down the main street, then that's advertising. And it's creating more attention to grabbing it. But then the analogy was, but if that elephant walks through the governor's or the mayor's flower bed and crushes all the flowers, and the newspaper writes an article about it, then that becomes public relations, right? And that becomes something different. And then if the circus logo on the sign and the elephant now suddenly makes people think of fun, right? And they're going, ooh, elephant. So now you got the logo with the elephant in the circus, then you got branding. And then
Mhm.
if all of that stuff comes together and people start buying your tickets, then that rolls into sales. And that was an analogy I think I sent you,
I
man, I
do
think,
remember that now. I do,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that was a while back that I sent you. Dr. Katani, feel free to comment on that.
Yeah, like I said, I've met different ways of looking at marketing,
Mhm.
like painting the elephant, having it parade through town, getting attention. A form of promotion, or you could call it advertising. Uh, PR is basically it's usually throwing water to a fire that your company created. It could
Mhm.
be anything, like the CEO says something problematic, and everyone is like, "Hey, wait, people are boycotting our brand." And yeah, in the end, I like the last part. It
Mhm.
has to end at sales.
Yeah.
Revenue is the main metric in marketing. Nothing else matters. You may have the most creative advertisement, but if it does not translate into sales, that's
Yeah.
there's no point in that. So in the end, ticket sales, they are the right kind of metric, and then you work backwards from that.
Mm. Nice.
Yeah, it is fun, Dad. I remember that story, and you were telling me about the PR thing. That's why I remember it because I remember the elephant in the PR. But,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think honestly a problem with in today's business and maybe not with the larger businesses, but I don't know. I can't blanket statement this, but I think the problem is people look at marketing as like this beast, this untamable beast, or something that is so specific and like I said, either social media or ads. And to answer my own question, I would say marketing is of course essential to every single business. But I would add a little side note on saying it depends on your context, obviously, your situation, budget, whatnot. And it depends on which part of marketing you need to focus on. So that's when you need to give that, I call it the internal audit of your own business, and or have someone else who you know is not gonna like lie to you and give you a true internal audit of your business and say, okay, this is what you can do, and this is what you need to focus on and what you can focus on at the time being. So I think that would be kind of my answer. Kelly, would you say you got anything for this?
Uh, I didn't say anything because I felt like I would find myself repeating a lot of things a
Yeah.
lot. all of you have said. So that's why I kind of refrain from that. So um, I would say that I agree with everybody's example of what marketing is and definition of what marketing is.
Yeah. And then, well, kind of the next thing is now that we've kind of tackled that broader audience of marketing, I am curious, Dr. Katani, what kind of drove you? I know you said data analytics was your thing, but I guess more of the question of what do you think of the importance of consumer behavior is
Mm,
for businesses?
mm,
So I was just reading an article on Toyota on how they figured that customers usually don't buy a car when their older car gets really, beat down, and then they buy a new car. What they realize that they buy a car when there's a happy occasion, like a birth of a child or a promotion, or that's where people buy a car. So then they tweak their advertisements around those kinds of occasions.
Mm.
So that is actually doing a study on consumer behavior. That is studying your customers or consumers essentially. So um, that's why I think consumer behavior is important because you need to have a good read on people. You need to understand them well, and more than the data analytics, what also drove me to consumer behavior is because I just like observing people. I'm curious about different types of personalities, different types of situations in which people make certain purchase decisions or decide not to purchase and things like that. And
mm,
what I did was, formalizing it all because in a PhD program, you need to have like these formal studies and do that. But even for a non-PhD person, like, you took my consumer behavior class, I didn't have you do like formal research, but I had you still think about, what kind of mental shortcuts people take, what kind of choices they make, like how they go from lead recognition to final purchases. All those are still important for people who who are in the business of dealing with other people, especially in marketing. You should have a good read on people, and as a marketing person, first and foremost, you should have a love for people. You can't be a misanthrope. You can't be a people hater. Like you should like being around people, and you should also like being around all kinds of people,
mm.
and not pick and choose, not be too judgmental. And once you do that, you start getting a good read on different types of people, and that propels you towards thinking, okay, how should I like I gave you the example of how with Kelly, I'll just keep it very short because he seems to be the kind of person who likes to come to his own conclusions. So things like that. So this is how consumer behavior helps companies when they think of people as people and not just numbers.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
hope I answered your question.
No.
No, I think that was a great answer. With consumer behavior, I find it that in the past it was something that was easily attainable for businesses with means. And now it's something that even a local business can attain themselves and utilize for their own benefit also, even to a small degree.
Mhm.
If it's not through systems of some kind that they pay for, it can be done as easily as just taking surveys to understand just basic wants from their customers. So something as simple as what smoothie do you like?
Yeah.
For like for like a smoothie shop or um I don't know. There's tons of examples, but something as simple as just taking a survey on what people like more than the other option and then giving that to the consumer. And I think that's the benefit that uh, tracking that does for you is you're able to know what your consumer wants. And that's what you were tackling on it being a people-centric activity for you to understand exactly what your consumer or your target audience wants and then to just give them that. Because at the end of the day, marketing is giving is created or was created to understand what the consumer wants and for you as the business to provide that value. And when you provide value, people tend to open their wallets and purchase.
Yeah.
Yeah, you. and I really like on what you guys are touching on, and that's every person is different, right? And then I think that's the beauty of consumer behavior because the numbers can show you the general trends that you need to follow. Obviously, over time, things change. And actually, Kelly, you're kind of already talking about the third question I wanted to get into with the future and how consumer behavior will change. But I think it's an extremely important field. I don't know how relevant it was prior, like years, like Dr. Katani, do you know? Was it a pretty prevalent field of study, like prior to even 2000 or?
It was. I think so. I'll give you more. Start with the psychology versus economics background. So back in the 70s, there was this major academic fight between psychologists and economists. So economists thought people are completely rational; they make rational choices. They cannot be manipulated into making choices that are objectively bad.
Mm.
And psychologists kept proving them wrong.
Yeah.
The most famous one is the prospect theory by Kahneman and Tversky, and then, more follow research was done. And then I think around that time, marketing also started getting more and more acquainted towards the psychological aspect of m- people purchase buying and selling stuff. So that's where it's way before 2000 where consumer behavior was a thing, and it continues to be. And to your point about how consumer behavior may change, well, people won't change as like we cannot evolve so much like pe- person in the 1950s looks would have the same psychological traits as a person now. Like cultures may change, but we as humans don't evolve. So consumer behavior per se will not change a lot, but the context in which you study will change. So pre 2000 or even pre 2010, no one studied influencers and their impact on consumer behavior. But now you'll see each and every journal publication have at least one article on influencers. So that keeps changing. But the field of consumer behavior, I think, is evergreen, and it is dependent a lot on the field of psychology because as psychological theories keep updating, marketing has to keep up with that.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
that's how I think about it. I hope I
Yeah.
answered that question.
No, yeah. Because
Nailed
I
it.
wasn't I wasn't 100% sure on like on that the prevalence of it prior to like especially like in the 19s and whatnot.
Mhm,
But what I was getting at in is no matter what, I think consumer behavior leads you to do one thing as a marketer because, like you said, you need, in the end of the day, sales. And I use this book last podcast. I'll probably do it a ton more, but by a book by Andy Elliott, and he's literally a professional sales guy. And in his opening preface, it's literally says the best salespeople in the world don't just show value of a product, they
mm,
put you
mm.
in a happy mood. And you kind of touched on that already. People don't buy when they're mad. I've never been mad and go like, I'm gonna go buy a car. Like that's
Yeah.
never I don't know if that's ever happened, right? So I just think the ability consumer behavior provides is you to kind of not manipulate, but be able to guide them to see, hey, okay, I'm not only happy, because like you said, I know people shop and they'll buy more when they're hungry or stuff like that. You put them in these moods to then elevate the chance that they end up buying these things or whatnot. And I just think that's kind of the beauty of consumer behavior as well.
In fact, speaking of moods, research has shown that when you're in a bad mood, you'll still buy, but you'll buy unhealthy stuff. You'll
Mhm.
buy
Interesting.
chocolates, you'll buy cakes
Interesting.
just to feel better. It's kind of comfort food. But when you're in a good mood, you may buy a salad because you're optimistic, you're happy, and you want to eat healthy. Like it's so when you're in bad mood, you can be um, kind of oriented towards buying unhealthy
Yeah.
stuff.
That's
Yeah.
actually really interesting. Yeah. I haven't even thought about it like that. I guess in his context, his main aspect is a car salesman. So I think a
Mhm.
lot of that experience is coming from there. But
Mhm.
that is actually a pretty interesting point that you bring up is that I mean, I don't know ads that are trying to make you mad per se or like people positioning, but that is an interesting consumer behavior
Well,
study.
but you're very right. I mean, and Dr. Katani is right on there's two pieces of this to look at. First of all, the mood changes everything. Hence why social media advertising is so rampant right now, because literally it's the new comfort food of today's society. It's dopamine. That's all it is. Dopamine after dopamine hit. And if you can, what you realize is the way the influencers do this is they're addressing certain basic needs that you have. And
Mhm.
I believe, Kelly, you had mentioned this in one of our previous podcasts. You were talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right?
Yep.
And how consumer behavior is usually built on that, from depending on your product, all the way up until people, want to actualize themselves to, I can't even speak it, say it. They can associate themselves to, maybe you inspire them, like back to the circus thing, right? You, at the very end, your ultimate goal is they want the experience to be positive. They, like an adult, wants to find their inner child with the wow of seeing elephants and things like that. But even if you're addressing some of the basic needs of, even like their emotional needs of needing to connect with something, into a community, into a larger group that gives them purpose and value. I mean, there's a reason that when you're in the worst possible psychological funk that you can be in, depression, it helps to get out of your little world and into a community and into something bigger than you. So you're distracted, right? You're literally distracted with something else. So I like where Dr. Khetani was. I'm going to keep calling him Doc. Dr. Khetani, he earned it. He earned it all of these years. He worked hard for it, so I'm going to address him that way.
You can call me Salil, like I said, man.
That's something. Well, you could call me El Hermino, but don't.
Yeah, don't call him El
Don't call me.
Hermino. Oh man. But I mean, we kind of were already moving and headed in this direction, and we already kind of talked about it a little bit, but I want to kind of go into it more. And because it's inevitable, like change is inevitable in business, the direction we're going. I mean, we talk about it all the time with AI, but not only that, just like the cultural change, right? Now social media is the more prevalent thing. I think the average age of smartphone users is like, I mean, they say it's like 9 or 10, but I'm sure it's more like 8 or so that people are actually getting introduced to these and whatnot. So I'm just curious on what do you think kind of the direction of consumer behavior as a whole is going, especially in today's society, and how it's kind of going to evolve, especially with like, e-commerce, social media, AI is another big one. I'm just curious on what your thoughts are on that.
So I think of so let me tell you what recent publications on consumer behavior are related to. One is influencer marketing. The other, and I'm not answering your question directly, but the other one is authenticity. And it is kind of related to your question where you talk about people being on smartphones and social media all the time. Gen Z cares a lot about authentic
Uh-oh.
authenticity
Did I freak?
and
Oh, you're good, Dan. Sorry,
um
keep going.
Oh, yeah.
so you know they've grown up on TikTok, they've grown up on Instagram Reels, they've grown up on a lot of influencers who do not like edit their stuff. But, they're just like their true authentic selves. They love the the scenes content and things like that. So a lot of research now is geared towards not prepackaged content that you saw in the 80s and 90s, but more towards authenticity. And that is, I think, a function of people growing up with their cell phones. And when you're on your cell phones, you're not watching packaged television, you're watching TikTok videos, Instagram reels, and so on and so forth. You're exchanging pictures through Snapchat. And consumer behavior is the focus is shifting more towards the authentic end of it. To your question about AI, I'm not sure where it leads to, but I can tell you one of the research that I did with Dr. Sachin Banker from University of Utah. We published it in Journal of Public Policy and Marketing, and the basically the findings of our research was that if you tell people that this product has been recommended by an algorithm, even though the product is objectively bad, if you bother to look at all the options that you have, and the algorithm is suggesting you an objectively bad product, people might still pick it. And this was in 2019 that we published, but now you know algorithm can be replaced with AI, and has become such a kind of a scary buzzword that people just might just believe you if you say that this is AI generated. You might think that okay, it has made a billion calculations per second and has come up with the perfect product for me, and you might still get manipulated to buy it.
Mhm.
So for me, I think um, I may be in the minority here, but I think AI hasn't come as long as a way as people think it has. Like, they get amazed when ChatGPT comes up with, a poem or something like that. But the thing with AI is it's only as good as the data you feed it.
Mhm.
And as of now, we still, I don't think, have fed it enough data to come up with perfectly accurate answers. So I'm
Mhm.
kind of not I'm giving you a vague answer because I myself do not know where AI and consumer behavior will get together in the future, because consumer behavior is all about humans and how are, and AI is all about how machines can be trained.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I don't see or I cannot maybe formulate a hypothesis where I can create like a connection between the two as of now, unless the one time I did that was more from a policy perspective, because that article got published in the Journal of Public Policy and Marketing on the
Mm.
dangers of intimidating people with this is algorithm generated, this is AI generated.
Mhm.
So I don't think we are there yet, uh, in terms of somehow mixing the two.
Yeah. No, I
Mhm.
mean, I just want to say, our literally previous podcast was about AI. Well, it was part two of the AI, and that was literally was one of the topics is people think of AI as this just they just start getting fanciful. They're just like, wow, this is an amazing thing. But really, and the guy we had on, he literally codes AI. That's his living. And
Mhm.
he's like, guys, the AI is literally still controlled by humans, and actually the biggest problem. And he is in the mindset that AI can only is kind of at a stagnation stage right now, just because we're already hitting our limits as humans because we can only feed it the data that we know. So it's not like it's
Mhm.
going to be even smarter than us as humans. We can
Yeah.
talk about that all day long, but you did bring up something with AI, and my dad actually just told me a story prior to before we hopped on Zoom. And Dad, I want you to tell that story, and then I also have a story that kind of rings along with that. So I'll let you go ahead and say that, Dad.
Yeah, so there's multiple warnings out there. So here's what I find interesting about the synergies between scams and marketing, right? Is because it's literally, matter of fact, you said it earlier, Dr. Katani. You said that you can do good with it, right? And then, of course, people use it to manipulate in negative ways other people. And one of the warnings that's going out there right now is with a lot of these AI models, I can just give it your social media platform right now.
Mhm.
And I can say, based off of everything that they've uploaded, everything that they've done, all the things that they've liked, because you can go through someone's like history and say, oh, for some reason they liked learning about this one fuel filter over here, or they like this, they're really into their profile working out, or
Mhm.
they really like underwater basket weaving. I don't know, but you can pull their entire profile because it's out there.
Yeah.
It's out there somewhere in their social media platform. You can load that in and you could say, build me based off of this, build me a profile on this person. And then what the scammers are doing is that they now cater a letter specifically down to what, now again, that's why it's important you protect your external, what people think of you compared to your internal, your actual, right? That's why social media isn't always the best, but you get these older generations that literally put everything out there. right? And now the scammers go out and they say, okay, scammers, if you're watching this, no, don't. This is bad. I'm not endorsing it. I'm just saying this is the methods. You go to a retired 70-year-old grandmother, you drop in their social media page because they don't know to keep it private. Oh, so and so ends up with this many grandkids, and they have all of these things. And then they go from that profile and they say, okay, so their grandkids are A, B, and C. And then they start building up and they can send scam letters. Suddenly they get these scam letters for insurance policies for their lives, right, for their kids. Or they start addressing, because that's one of the issues that you now have, is we now have cases of AI voice calls that are emulating someone else's voice that they pull off of a family video off of social media. So now they can script it. They can have the AI voice call and say, please, I'm in trouble. Don't tell my mom and dad. I need some gift cards, right? This is happening now. And that's where the evil side of where AI is going. What the positive side of AI, the way I use it in a lot of different ways, is to help me serve my customers better. In even in one case, you were talking about customer experience. So there's a term that you will hear out there, maybe here and there. It's another buzzword in the industry, and it's XLA, which is, you have SLAs, which is service level agreements that you do, if you're providing a service, and then you get XLAs, which is customer experience. How do they really feel about you? And it's a buzzword because nobody's really defined it. I mean, some tools out there say that they have it, but it's still a blurb, and nobody's come into the industry and said, this is exactly what it is. But the way I use AI in this case is tying XLA into what does this truly mean in a cross dimensional correspondence with, let's say, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So then I can understand if these are truly the basic functions of what people want, then what does XLA, how do I build my XLAs for the customers? And so one project I'm working on is, for example, let's say the very basic fundamental of psychological needs, right? In the psychology, and this is what's weird. I'll just give you a couple and then I'll shut up. Psychological needs as far as XLA factors go. Availability and performance. If you go on your phone and the app that you're providing your customer does not work or they can't connect, that is a major psychological impact to how they trust you and your company and your product, right? And then we build out some stuff. Safety needs. Okay, that's another one. You would think your general security and safety, how would that tie into XLA? Well, I have to make sure that my products are secure, like security, their personal information is protected and things like that. So I don't think, in to Dr. Khetani's point, the issue is that it is just a tool, like any other tool that we have. And the risk that we have with this is it's growing so fast that the same creativity that law-abiding citizens that in humanitarians efforts and philanthropists care about people and using to grow, there is an equal and opposite negative force of people that want to use that to abuse and exploit and take advantage of people that we have to be careful with, especially with AI. Especially when you're starting to now scrape people's profiles and you're starting to create things that you know are bad for them. So like Dr. Khetani said, when people are in a bad mood, they eat bad food. And if you suddenly start looking at somebody in a bad mood because they put the sad face on there, then suddenly you can target them with political ads that just agitate them more and drive them insane and this kind of thing. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm done talking. I didn't want to take up 45
No,
minutes.
no, Dad, you're you're good. Yeah, I just thought that was interesting. You literally just told me that, and I was like, I would have never thought of that. I don't actively think on how to scam people and manipulate them, but it's true. Like they
Yeah.
literally say, give a profile and it just mass scans everything, all of their behavior, everything, maybe even a human eye just might not have caught, catches all their patterns and says this would be the best product and most likely for them to click. And that's just kind of scary to think about. And I think it goes into what I would answer. And again, Dr. Katana, you said this perfectly. People, I don't think people necessarily change. I think, like you said, the human condition, we
Mm,
necessarily don't change. I think the context and the cultures, all of that changes what we're provided. But in the end of the day, I don't think human beings necessarily change. But I do think what changes is the means you can read the human behavior. So, and going back to consumer behavior. So I'll let Kelly explain this in 1 second. But first, my story was this was even years ago. Golly, I don't even remember how many years ago, but it was about, I believe it was Target. No, it was Amazon or Target. I forget exactly
mm.
what, but it had predicted based off of this lady's needs that she was actually pregnant, and she didn't tell anybody that she was pregnant. But
Wow.
it was
Yeah.
recommending like baby strollers and stuff like that. And I think one of the family members was like, "Hey, why is this popping up?" And they're like, "Well, I'm pregnant." And it's like nobody knew this, but based off of her clicking patterns, her likes, her
Mm,
amount of time, percentage of watch time on video, all of this factored in into being able to read, okay, I'm going to offer her baby diapers. And then she's like, well, shoot, I kind of need those. And I just think it's kind of crazy because the
yeah.
ability to read, I think, is going to be obviously amplified. But again, the human behavior, I don't think, or the
Mm.
human condition is not necessarily going to be changing. Kelly, I'll let you kind of go over this real quick because I don't want to take too much time, but explain to Katani like the RFM now and how that's different from just the previous models of reading behavior and like how that like kind of what we use.
Yeah. So what the RFM is it's a segment that stands for recency, frequency, and monetary va value that we take and we implement in our loyalty program that we provide for
Mm,
our clients that takes those three things into account and segments them. In this segment, you can tweak however you want, and it's between um, super loyal customer in terms of how recent they've been there, which is super recent, and how frequent they're there, which is more than 3 times a week, and then the amount they spend to, you're about to lose this person because they've been there once in the past 3 weeks and they only spent like 15, like, you know what I mean? So it takes that into account and it automatically follows up with them based on a system we built to follow up with these individuals in that manner. Just to keep it brief, that's what it does.
mm.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, what did you want me to ask, Isaac? Like, what do you think about that, Professor Katani?
So yeah, that is good use of data, and people call that, that's a part of machine learning as well, where you feed all that data to a program and then they do the classifying for you. And Isaac, I'm going to also talk about it during one of our classes in the MBA program,
Oh, nice.
where you can use machine learning algorithms to classify customers, and then now you know how much money you want to spend in quoting certain customers, because loyalty programs are all about playing favorites. You uh,
Mm.
you kind of give more perks to customers who constantly buy from you.
Hmm.
And I guess with the recency frequency thing, the frequency is the easiest, like how frequently they have bought from you. Recency is how recently they would have bought. And this is my assumption, these models can be tweaked, as Kelly said, would be that, you know has there been a huge time gap between the last time they bought something between now? Why is that? Like, should we follow up with that customer? So if you can feed that data into a machine learning algorithm, it actually helps you, um, saves a lot of time, basically, rather than doing it manually.
Yeah.
Mm.
So those are the kinds of things you can even implement for small businesses, because that data is specific to that business, and you don't need to have external data which will just confirm things. So yeah, I'm glad you're working on things like that.
Yeah.
Mm,
That's
Yeah.
funny that, yeah. No,
Yeah.
you
It's
go, Kelly.
data. It's data that is practical in the sense of because there are also other businesses that offer similar things, but um, they take into account a lot of other minuscule things that I don't deem very important. I think those three factors that I named are probably the most important out of anything you can track. At a basic level, if you get those three things, I think you're on the right track. But it's important information to be able to personalize things to your customers and feed
mm,
them the needs that they might want based on those three indicators.
mm,
It gives the business that has it and the business that hasn't, it gives the business that has it a huge advantage over the one that doesn't, because now you're able to understand who is worth investing into, and
mm,
both customers are worth investing into, but one investment is more so to keep them incentivized, and the other is to uh get them choosing you more and more. But it's great information for a business uh within Tiffin or anywhere in the local area that we're in, and even the Austin area. I think any business that doesn't have this implemented will benefit from something like this.
mm. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
it goes well. What he's talking about is, and this is what people forget the most in anything that you provide a service. At the end of the day, you don't get to eat and sleep and pay your bills, in safety and stuff, unless you have a relationship with your customer. It's okay to get to build a profile to better understand them because it's a relationship with them, right? And if you build a relationship, then they fight for you, right? The customer wants to be there. And again, it goes back to what we were talking about in the hierarchy of needs. People long for connection and relationship. They do. That's like the third level, right? I know they need to feel belonging and love, but it's the same thing. They say, Kelly, Mr. Aitito Strategies, you care about me and you want me to succeed in a world where it's very competitive and all of these people, it's negative and so forth. You actually care enough about me to invest in me, right? And to make sure that I'm going to succeed. And I think that wraps up exactly what you're trying to get to is relationships are key. If you forget your relationships and they're just another checkbox, like those big companies that you were talking about, they're like, sign up, fine, we'll give you the tools, we'll give you a password, figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, oh, horrible strategy.
100%. It's all about the customer. The money that businesses are making, the money that we're not making is in the pockets of the consumer, and
Mm,
we have to be able to know what they want and provide that. That actually goes to what our strategy is, and moving forward, it's always been our strategy, but obviously it's tweaked since then. But moving forward into the future, it's
mhm,
about helping businesses build a brand. And you talked about the brand with your example with the elephant, a
mhm,
brand that would be missed if they were to disappear. So
mhm,
we want people to, if that business were to just go out of business or leave or disappear, they would miss them. And how you do that is one, you take care of your customers.
mhm,
And that's that is a that is work that is difficult to do because it takes more than just a transaction. It takes more than just a transaction. It takes emotional
mhm.
labor also to care enough
Yeah.
to want to go further with that specific customer. And with all these tools that we're mentioning, it makes it easier. You can do it without it, but these tools are being built to make these processes super simple and easier to attain, and things of that nature. And I had a question, one final, I think we're almost up, but one question for you, Professor Katani. in within our time running ITO strategies and talking to many different businesses, one thing we have noticed is that false proxies have been something that a lot of business owners tend to really focus on. And by false proxies, I mean things that are easily trackable but do really nothing for you. So I'm talking the likes and the impressions, the reach, and these are indicators that if you get these numbers on your screen to thousands of the number to go up, it makes them feel good. But as the marketer, you're looking at these numbers, you can't see how it doesn't do anything for their profits. But a lot of them tend to really like those false proxies. And my question to you is, within your time in this profession, how have you how have you been able to help either uh, uh sorry,
Like
the
clients or
not clients, but the person you're working for, or whoever you're working for, and stuff like that. How have you gotten them to look past those proxies to focus on things that are gonna help them, that are more practical, that aren't quote sexy, but they do better to build a brand or go towards the path of building or increasing profits and things of that nature. What is your way of doing that? Because it has to do with communication, one, but I just want to know how you go about, setting those standards early on to and letting them know that these things are fine, because it's not that running ads is bad or working on your social media strategy is bad, but focusing on that solely as your marketing strategy, I have seen isn't a recipe for success.
Mm.
So, like I said, the first and foremost thing you should always, always look at is sales. How much are you selling? That is never a false proxy. That is as true as it gets.
Mhm.
So that is very important. Is whatever you're doing right now giving you sales? The second one is return on marketing investment. So let's say your client invests a lot in social media ads, invests maybe in traditionally through billboards and stuff like that. What you should track is what was their sales growth before they did it. And after, let's say their sales growth was like this, and then they spent a lot of money at this point of time, and their sales growth went this way. That is not a false proxy because now you can attribute that sales growth to the efforts that they made, which is spending money. Now, when it comes to likes, impressions, comments, those are harder to correlate with sales, but I wouldn't call them false proxies because if customers are engaging with you, we already talked about how you need to make a customer feel good. They should like working with you. You should form relationships with them. Likes, comments, impressions, especially likes and comments, are engagement metrics that are actually proving the fact that customers want to create that relationship with you. So I wouldn't call them false proxies, but I also wouldn't call them, if you get a lot of engagement, that is a success.
Mhm.
Mm.
I would try to figure out how to correlate that to sales. So in the end, I'll tell my customer that keep working on your social media, keep posting regularly, keep posting at the right time, come up with engaging posts. Don't just keep promoting your menu all the time. Uh, have a joke. Like if you see Jolly's Facebook, it keeps having these jokes.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, come up with these things that engage people. Maybe have a poll and things like that. That
Mhm.
is important. That is helpful. But that could be a goal in itself.
Yeah.
We will help you there. What we mainly want to help you with is, first of all, in marketing, I keep telling people that, it's not just a function to bringing money, but it also costs money. So first of all, spend money if you're struggling in sales, and then correlate the money you spent to how much money you're getting back. So don't just focus on your organic social media posts, focus on paid social, advertise, uh, around town, like maybe billboards or sponsor some events. Like if a downtown pizza party is happening in Tiffin, maybe sponsor it if you're a pizza place, be a part of it rather, or promote it, things like that. So uh, it all starts with sales, and you work backwards from there. So that's
Mhm.
my answer to your question. And I like to also briefly touch upon, you're talking about uh, uh, guiding customers of making relationships with them. I'm reading a book called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller,
Mhm.
which talks about how customer is the hero and you are just the guides. Your business is never the hero. So ITTO Strategies is just a guide. Your hero is the businesses you're helping, and whatever you're doing is to guide them. So as Mr. Gideon said, you make the customer feel important as the hero, and they will respond. They will become your brand advocates.
Mhm.
Uh, in the end. So those are the two things that I wanted to highlight.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And Dr. Katani, because you love business analytics anyway, right? So I mean, we're brothers now. We're best friends. Did we just become best friends? No. But yeah, I love what the point that you brought out, and the term I'll admit, because you were calling it false proxy, Kelly, but I couldn't remember the term. It's called actually vanity metrics, right?
Mhm.
And so that's the ones that are most dangerous to customers, because and Dr. Katani hit on that exactly, because it's that emotional part that makes you feel good.
Mhm.
And so, like in the analytics world, or for my group, what we do, like reporting and analytics and insights into the customer data, the number one thing is it's okay to have vanity metrics, but that would be like customer surveys, right? If you just say, "Hey, I got a 5, 4 out of 5, or whatever," and you really don't look at it, but if you break it down, kind of in the comparison I gave you with XLAs, it's not only a factor of a category of your service, but then sub factors, like in case we may be deploying, setting up a new employee for a company, right? And the sub factor is, hey, did they get their computer on time? Did they get their login on time? Did they get their cell phone hooked up in time? Stuff like this, these sub factors that raise that up to a feel good score that now is your XLA. So if you're like, hey, I'm rated at a 50, that's different than just a bunch of likes, because it's going, hey, because all of these sub factors have different weightings for the importance of their job, and that gets rolled up into a holistic factor of just a setup. But you get what I'm saying? It's the setup, get them ready to do their job, and then all the components that they have underneath it. And hey, that is actually a good feel and emotional boost, and it's actionable, right?
Yeah.
I can go in and let's say, what's the deal with the cell phones? Why can't we get them the cell phones for their jobs?
Yeah.
Right. And then I can take action specific. But to your point, vanity metrics will kill a business. To Dr. Katani's point, because you got the ultimate measure at the end of the day is the dollar,
Yeah.
is the Benjamins, right? That are floating out there. So.
Yeah, I want to apologize, Professor Khatani. My brain is just now like booting up, so all the questions are now coming, and I wish it would have booted up at the beginning of it, so I would have laid all of it down. But you know, I think this is what our focus is with the clients that we approach, and our focus isn't only to just do marketing for marketing's sake or do marketing theater, right? Do it just for the so you think you're doing something, but it's to establish the smallest viable audience. So meaning, and this is a honestly a false. Oh no, I won't call it false proxy, but this is a mindset a lot of new business owners, and even I would say experienced businesses going to, is that we think, and we had it too, where we can serve everyone, but
Mm,
we all have at one point said that everyone is different, and given that. social media is a micro media and not a mass media, right? Mass medium or media. It means everyone can have what they want where they want on demand. So I can watch different shows from you on Netflix and I can buy what I want when I want. So given that we're all so different, you just cannot appeal to everyone. So what we're trying to engage with the clients that we're working with is what is your smallest viable audience, and that can be anywhere between 100 people to 1,000 people, even if for a small business. For like a Apple or a Nike, that could be anywhere between 50 to 100 million people, and which obviously that's 50 million people can change anybody's life. Let's just be real, but so can 1,000 loyal customers. So can 500 loyal customers. And when focusing on your smallest viable audience or finding that smallest viable audience, we believe that the most success can come from that than going for just a large amount of people.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up smallest viable audience, or I call it minimum viable audience, and it's kind of cheating because for Isaac's quiz on first week of the MBA, I've asked him to look up the term minimum viable audience because I have a question about that in the quiz. Um,
I guess I'm cheating a
so,
little bit.
but it's not me who's cheating because Kelly kind of explained what it is, so it's not me who gave you the answer. So. Uh,
Yeah,
Wow.
well, to be fair, me and him have already been talking about this topic, so I promise I'm not like looking these things up before.
That's fine. So minimum viable audience, yeah, or smallest viable audience. For a small business, you should know what it is,
Mhm.
but it can't be too small. It can't be too specific. Like
Yeah.
for a long time, I think a sandwich deli or a salad place didn't open in Tiffin because people who thought about it thought, okay, we don't have the numbers in this town of 17,000 people to open this. We'll have like some regular customers, but we won't have a consistent inflow of people. But over a period of time, trends change, and those two businesses are doing well. And that's the essence of a minimal viable audience, where just make sure you don't make your clients be too specific about the kind of people they're targeting,
Mhm.
because in the end there is also this other notion of responsiveness. Like, I'll give you the example of video games. For a long time they were just marketed to little young boys and young males, when there was an equally responsive market of women who also loved video games,
Mm.
and you missed out on that market. So, in your quest for a minimum viable audience and being too hyper focused, you should not lose out on people who would still want to be a part of
Yeah.
your business.
Yeah.
So, it's a trade off. It's not, get the minimum viable audience possible, as minimum as possible, versus have a mass marketing strategy. You should be able to find this happy medium where your segment is slightly diverse of different people, so that uh, you're profitable, you have enough revenues to survive. But at the same time, the advantage of having a minimum viable audience is then your marketing is very specific to that specific set of people. I hope I answered your question.
You
Yeah.
did.
Mm.
I'm gonna have to cut us off because I just thought of more stories and questions, and I'm so happy that you came. Maybe even eventually, if we ever get the pleasure, I would love to have you back on. I'm sure we can. There's a lot more to be said, and I know there's a lot more to be said. So thank you so much, or Dr. Katani, for coming on. Sorry that we've kind of already covered things that we're going over in my quiz, apparently. Um, but again, thank you so much. Before I end this, is there any way that you would want people to find you, or maybe any books or anything like that, or what you're up to?
Yeah, just I guess LinkedIn is the place where I'm most active. So yeah, that's one place. I do have a website that I've bought where I plan to write blog posts, but I haven't got around to it. So yeah, LinkedIn.
Awesome.
That, that's
You want to
that's.
just say it, and I'll put it in big words right here and for YouTube.
You can just look me up on LinkedIn. You have my
Okay.
name there.
Okay, I'll just do that. Awesome. Thank you so
And
much.
there's only, I can assure you, Khitani is a very rare name, even in India, and so is Salil. So I'm pretty sure there's only one Salil Khetani in India, so they won't start following someone else.
Right. Now,
That does make it easy.
I have one more question for you, and
Sure.
I know where this is going, Dr. Khatani. But how does it make you feel? You're investing, you teach thousands of students, year after year in all of this. How does it feel for you personally to see these two young men that you personally watched over and taught? How does it make you feel to see what they're doing now?
Amazing. Teaching is a very fulfilling job. In fact, I know Kelly even before I know Isaac because Kelly was in my Aim High class. So Aim High, you may not know it. It's like an onboarding class for freshmen.
Mhm.
So Kelly was in that class in fall 2019. So I know him from his very first semester. And Isaac, I know his first class was on Zoom, so I know him from there. It is. And I'd like to plug Heidelberg University as well because of its small class sizes and because of the focus that we have on students. Uh, you're able to follow their career path, and it is always fulfilling to see students who are successful, students who are applying what they've learned, and students who are enterprising enough like these co-founders. So yeah, teaching is a fulfilling job because it's not just the end of the day that you taught something and you feel good, but you kind of follow students' success stories, and it's always a great feeling to see them succeed and be driven like that.
So from a parent that has invested a lot of money into Heidelberg to get these educations, but I want to personally thank you for the amazing job you did with both of I claim Kelly is my son too, so he's one of my sons. So both of these fine young men, and thank you so much for your investment to making them even better men in today's society. So thank you. I
It's
appreciate that.
always a pleasure. Thank you, and I had a fun conversation. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
But
Yes.
don't hold that against Isaac. Don't change his grade and just let him take the test.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, we'll go and wrap it up, but thank you so much. And again, thank you for Dr. Khatani. And thank you guys. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. There are so many more podcasts to come, and we're excited to see the growth not only we go through, but you as a viewer can go through. And maybe, who knows, we'll see Dr. Khatani on here again one day. So thank you, and we will see y'all in the next one.
Thank you.